What to do the day after you've been fired from the job that you've been working at for over 5 years. Let's see, what was it? November, December, January. Almost February. 5 years and almost 4 months. Well, just sit home, try not to cry. I'm not going to cry. I've realized I'm not going to cry as much as I wanted to last night and all day today. I'm just going to read Utopia for Realists. Let's dig into a chapter. This time is different. The million-dollar question is, what should we do? What new jobs will the future bring? And more importantly, will we want to do those new jobs? Employees of companies like Google will be well cared for, of course, with finger-licking food, daily massages, and generous paychecks. Okay, I don't know about that. But to get hired in Silicon Valley, you'll need inordinate talent, ambition, and luck. That's one side, what economists call labor market polarization, or the widening gap between lousy jobs and lovely jobs. Though the share of highly skilled and unskilled jobs has remained fairly stable, work for the average skilled is on a decline. Slowly but surely, the bedrock of modern democracy, the middle class, is crumbling, and while the U.S. is leading this process, other developed nations aren't far behind. Okay, hold on. I think I need to get a coffee. I need to have a little bit of coffee. Just a second. Okay, I'm back, but guess what? I don't remember where I left off. That's hilarious, but I do have my coffee. Well, we said that to get hired in Silicon Valley, you'll need inordinate talent, ambition, and luck. That's one side of what economists call labor market polarization, or the widening gap between lousy jobs and lovely jobs. Maybe that's where I stopped. Though the share of highly skilled and unskilled jobs has remained fairly stable, work for the average skilled is on a decline. Slowly but surely, the bedrock of modern democracy, the middle class, is crumbling. And while the U.S. is leading this process, other developed nations aren't far behind. See, this is the part that gets to me, because this is why this book is getting popular. That's what I think. I think because shit is starting to affect the middle class, now people are listening. We've needed a UBI for so long, but hey, what's up with that painting's back there? You didn't see that? No. Okay, I just, anyway, I lost my job yesterday, so I'm obviously disgruntled about shit. I'm just gonna keep reading. Some people in our modern land of plenty have even found themselves completely sidelined, despite being hale and hearty and eager to roll up their sleeves. Similar to the English draft horses at the turn of the 20th century, they won't find employees willing to hire them at any wage. Asian, African, or robot labor will always come cheaper. Well, I don't know about that either. And while it's still often more efficient to outsource work cheaply to Asia and Africa, and that comes with a... maybe I should look at that. The moment wages and technologies in those countries start to catch up, robots will win out even there. In the end, outsourcing is just a stepping stone. Eventually, even the sweatshops in Vietnam and Bangladesh will be automated. What's that called when they put a little letter source? There's a source for this information. Maybe we should go see. Which? Where's the 29? Oh, come on, really? I hate when they do that. I wish they would just put them all straight in a row. I'm going to pause just a sec. Okay, so the note on... there are indications that even jobs for the highly skilled have come under pressure since 2000, leading them to snap up the less skilled jobs. Increasingly... Right. That's true. I came back from Portland in 2009, and I was doing job search, and I had an employer that I was doing an interview with actually tell me things are so bad right now that I have the upper hand, because it used to be, he said, that he got all the shitty people applying. I don't know that he used the word shitty, but he said that the work pool that he had to choose from were the lowest of the low, ignorant people. But now, because of economics, the state of the economy, college professors were losing their jobs and coming to him for jobs, so now he was able to pick from the cream of the work pool, so he didn't have to settle for the ignorant, lowly, poor person. He could get these educated people now. So anyway, that whole part about them snapping up the less skilled jobs, that's what that guy was getting at. Increasingly, employees are overqualified for their jobs. And that is from Paul Beaudry, David A. Green, and Ben Sand, The Great Reversal in the Demand for Skill and Cognitive Tasks. And notation 29. Globalization may even have put the brakes on technological progress. After all, for the moment, our clothes are being produced not by steel robotic arms or intelligent cyborgs, but by fragile children's fingers in Vietnam and China. For many companies, outsourcing work to Asians still beats using robots. This could also be why we're still waiting for so many of the big technological dreams of the 20th century to materialize. See David Graeber of Flying Cars and Declining Rate of Profit. In the robots don't get sick, don't take time off, and never complain. But if they wind up forcing masses of people into poorly paid dead-end jobs, well, that's just asking for trouble. The British economist Guy Standing has predicted the emergence of a new, dangerous precariat, a surging social class of people in low-wage, temporary jobs and with no political voice. Their frustrations sound eerily like those of William Leadbetter. Leadbetter or Leadbeater? Leadbeater? I don't know. This English craftsman, who was afraid that machines would destroy his country, or indeed the entire universe, was a part of such a dangerous class and of a movement that laid the foundations of capitalism. Meet the Luddites. Leadbetter or Leadbeater? Leadbeater? I don't know. This English craftsman, who was afraid that machines would destroy his country, or indeed the entire universe, was a part of such a dangerous class and of a movement that laid the foundations of capitalism. Meet the Luddites of Rawford's Mill. April 11th, 1812, some 100 to 200 masked men have gathered on a darkened plot of land near Huddersfield, between Manchester and Leeds in England. They've congregated around a stone column known as Dumb Steeple, armed to the teeth with hammers, axes, and pistols. Their leader is a charismatic young cropper by the name of George Mellor. He raises his long pistol brought from Russia, some say, up for all to see. Their target is Rawford's Mill. a factory owned by one William Cartwright, a wealthy businessman. Cartwright has just introduced a new type of power loom that can do the work of 4 skilled weavers. Since then, unemployment among the Yorkshire Luddites, as these masked men call themselves, has soared. But Cartwright has been tipped off. He has called in soldiers, and they are lying in wait. 20 minutes, 140 bullets, and 2 deaths later, Mellor and his men are forced to retreat. Judging by the bloodstains found as far as 4 miles away, dozens of men have been hit. 2 weeks passed before William Horsfall, a mill owner enraged by the attack on Rawfolds Mill, rides from Huddersfield to the nearby village of Marsden, swearing he'll soon ride up to his saddle in Luddite blood. What he doesn't know is that 4 Luddites, including Mellor, are plotting an ambush. Horsfall is dead before noon, felled by a bullet fired from the barrel of a Russian pistol. In the months that follow, all Yorkshire is up in arms. A committee headed by the energetic magistrate Joseph Radcliffe is appointed to investigate the battle at Rawfolds Mill and the murder of William Horsfall. They launch a manhunt. Soon, Benjamin Walker, one of the men responsible for luring Horsfall into the trap, turns himself into Radcliffe, hoping to save his own skin and claim the promised £2,000 reward. Walker identifies his co-conspirators as William Thorpe, Thomas Smith, and their leader, George Mellor. Not long thereafter, all 3 are swinging from a scaffold. I want to go back to this sentence here. The British economist Guy Standing has predicted the emergence of a new dangerous precariat. Guy Standing wrote a wonderful, very short book about this, and I highly encourage everyone to read it. It is called The Precariat. I actually have a PDF copy that I will send you. I think it's that important of a book to read. Okay, Luddites in right. Luddites in the right. Not one of the prisoners shed a tear, reported the Leeds Mercury on the day following the executions. Mellor had prayed and begged forgiveness for his sins, but made no reference to his Luddite activities. Walker, the traitor, was spared the gallows but never got his reward. He is said to have ended his days impoverished on the streets of London. 200 years later, Rawfolds Mill is long gone, but there is still a rope works nearby where the workers like to tell of Luddite ghosts roaming the fields at night. And they're right, the specter of Luddism remains with us to this day. It was at the beginning of the first machine age that textile workers in central and northern England rose up in rebellion, taking their name from the movement's mythical leader, Ned Ludd, who was supposed to have smashed 2 looms in a fit of rage in 1779. Because labor unions were outlawed, the Luddites opted for what the historian Eric Hobsbawm calls negotiation by riot. Advancing from factory to factory, the activists left a trail of destruction in their wake. Of course, the laborer, William Leadbeater, may have been exaggerating slightly when he predicted that machines would be the destruction of the universe, but the Luddites' concerns were far from unfounded. Their wages were plummeting and their jobs were disappearing like dust in the wind. How were those men thus thrown out of employ to provide for their families? Wondered the late 18th century cloth workers of Leeds. Some say, begin and learn some other business. Suppose we do. Who will maintain our families while we undertake the arduous task? And when we have learned it, how do we know we shall be any better for all our pains? For another machine may arise, which may take away that business also. The Luddite rebellion, at its height around 1811, was brutally crushed. More than 100 men were hanged. They had declared a war on machines, but it was the machines that won. As a result, this episode is generally treated as something of a minor hiccup in the march of progress. Ultimately, after all machines generated so many new jobs that there were still enough to go around, even after the 20th century population explosion, according to the radical freethinker Thomas Paine, every machine for the abridgment of labor is a blessing to the great family of which we are part. And so they are. The word robot actually comes from the Czech robota, meaning toil. Humans created robots to do precisely those things they'd rather not do themselves. Machinery must work for us in coal mines, Oscar Wilde enthused in 1890. Machines should be the stoker of steamers and clean the streets and run messages on wet days and do anything that is tedious or distressing. According to Wilde, the ancient Greeks had known an uncomfortable truth. Slavery is a prerequisite for civilization. On mechanical slavery, on the slavery of the machine, the future of the world depends. However, there's something else that is equally vital to the future of our world, and that's a mechanism for redistribution. We have to devise a system to ensure that everybody benefits from this second machine age, a system that compensates the losers as well as the winners. For 200 years, that system was the labor market, which ceaselessly churned out new jobs, and in so doing so, distributed the fruits of progress. But for how much longer? What if the Luddite fears were premature, but ultimately prophetic? What if most of us are doomed in the long run to lose the race against the machine? What can be done? Not much, according to many economists. The trends are clear. Inequality will continue to increase, and everybody who hasn't managed to learn a skill that machines cannot or will not be able to master will be sidelined. Making high earners feel better in just about every part of their lives will be a major source of job growth in the future, writes the American economist Taylor Cowan. Though the lower classes might have access to new amenities like cheap solar power and free Wi-Fi, the gap between them and the ultra-rich will be wider than ever. Beyond that, the rich and well-educated will continue to close ranks, even as peripheral villages and towns grow more impoverished. We're already seeing this happen in Europe, where Spanish techies can more easily find jobs in Amsterdam than in Madrid, and Greek engineers are pulling up stakes and heading for cities like Stuttgart and Munich. People with a college education are moving to live closer to other people with a college education. In the 1970s, the most learned American city in terms of the percentage of residents with 4-year degrees was 16 percentage points more educated than the least educated city. Today, this difference has doubled. If people used to judge each other on their parentage, now it's the diplomas on their wall. As long as machines can't go to college, a degree offers higher returns than ever. So it's not surprising that our standard response has been to call for more money for education. Rather than outrun the machine, we do our best to keep up with it. After all, massive investments in schools and universities are what enabled us to adapt to the technological tsunamis of the 19th and 20th centuries. But then, not much was needed to boost the earning capacity of a nation of farmers. Just basic skills like reading, writing, and arithmetic. Preparing our own children for the new century will be considerably more difficult, however, not to mention expensive. All the low-hanging fruit has already been plucked. Alternately, we could take a tip from Dutch chess grandmaster Jan Hein Donner, probably pronouncing that wrong. when asked what his strategy would be if he were pitted against a computer. He didn't have to think long. I'd bring a hammer. To choose that path would be to follow in the footsteps of someone like Holy Roman Emperor II, 1768 to 1835, who refused to allow the construction of factories and railways. No, I will have nothing to do with it, he declared, lest the revolution might come into the country. His resistance meant that, far into the 19th century, Austrian trains continued to be drawn by horses. Anyone who wants to continue plucking the fruits of progress will have to come up with a more radical solution. Just as we adapted to the first machine age through a revolution in education and welfare, so the second machine age calls for drastic measures like a shorter work week and universal basic income.